What do you say, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs baseball channel. The Cubs have decided to pass on Matt Chapman. He got a 3-year deal from the Giants. We're going to talk about that. Owen Caissie having a huge spring training. I know it's only March the 2nd, but this guy's really showing off exactly what he brings to the table. We're going to get into all of that stuff and more. Kike Hernandez with some comments alluding to baseball colluding against free agents. I vehemently disagree with that assessment. So we're going to talk about that as well. And we'll get you right up to the Cubs game as they get set to take on the Dodgers. And Shota Imanaga will make his Cubs debut. So we're going to do it. We're going to do it live. We appreciate all you guys being here. And if you're hanging out with us right now, make sure that you like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up and let's get this thing going. Go Cubs. What do you say, everybody? I'm Mick Gillispie. Welcome to the Cubs baseball channel. And this is definitely a pop-up show if you're waiting for our video this morning. I had the rotavirus and suffered about 24 hours of living hell. So I'm back. I couldn't get out of bed to do a show yesterday. So I figured the compromise was let's just do a live show today. We'll lead you right up to the Cubs and the Dodgers spring training game. And we'll talk about a lot of the stuff going on right now with the Cubs. So get in the comments section, though, and appreciate all you guys. Omar, thank you, man, coming at you from Texas. Love the fact that Cubs fans are everywhere. And I have talked to people about this before. The Cubs are such a unique brand because of WGN television. You have your Chicago Cubs fans that live in the city, in the Windy City, and then everywhere you go, there are Cubs fans. And so as a fan base and, just to try to market them, you've got to market to the city and you've got to market to the country. And really, you could even call them a national brand when you talk about guys like Seiya Suzuki and Shota Imanaga now being on the team. And for Imanaga, it was like, I want to play there. And same thing with Cody Bellinger, who is back as well. So, again, thank all of you guys for hanging out. All right, let's just jump right into this. Cubs out on Chapman. What does that tell us? It tells us a couple of things. First off, when Cody Bellinger signed his contract, that contract was $30 million into what the Cubs had to spend per year, right? And then it left them like $3 million above that to really work with, or they're going over the tax threshold and they would be taxed at a higher percent. It would cost them a lot of money, right? So I'm not saying that they wouldn't have done that. And I think that there's a possibility that for the right deal, if they felt like it was going to help them win the World Series, you make that move. Maybe you save that for down the line a little bit, or are you as management looking at the roster right now going, okay, are there any interchangeable pieces financially that we could move that would allow us leeway if we wanted to do that? With all of that said, I feel like Chapman was offensively, Christopher Morel had better numbers last year. Would I say that they were phenomenally better? No. Defensively, Chapman wipes the field with him. I mean, Chapman's, a Gold Glover and really one of the best defensive third baseman that's come along the game in a while. I mean, Nolan Arenado right there in that mix too. But I mean, you're talking about just amazing defensive talent. Would that have fit with the Cubs? Yeah, I think it would have. But if you're looking at the Cubs roster and the money situation, Morel is just such a cheaper alternative if you can get him to play third base, right? And that's what the Cubs have done. And it's pretty much what I expected. 1 minute, the guy makes just a phenomenal, acrobatic, amazing play. And then the next minute, he boots a double play ball. He's got to get more consistent with the routine stuff. And I think if he just made the routine plays, you wouldn't even care as much about making the spectacular stuff. It's the routine plays that I look at and go, okay, Christopher Morel has an issue in that area. And how long will the Cubs, you know, basically let that ride if it doesn't get better? But I think that him enjoying the position's a good thing. The fact that he's so athletic's a good thing. And I feel like somebody's got to take that job. And his long-term stability as a member of the Cubs, I think it really depends on his ability to play that position and play it well. And I think that the more he plays it, the better he's going to get at it. For me, and I'm not an expert. I have watched baseball for, I don't know, 40 years, and until he gets better with his footwork before the pitch, to me, he's always going to have problems because you got to play on the balls of your feet when you play third base. And if you watch him make the error on the double play ball the other day, it's almost like they caught him flat-footed. But it takes a lot of time to get used to. Watch the great third baseman and how they're always like, they'll take a couple of steps back and then just kind of take little tiny steps in towards the ball. And that gives them the ability to react quickly to a position that where you have obviously not much time to react. But if not him, I think the other reason that they didn't sign Chapman outside of the money aspect of it is Matt Shaw, who they drafted in the first round. Now, I'm guessing that Shaw is going to play a ton of third base this year in the minor leagues, which is something that he really has not done. But if you're going to get him on the diamond, he's got to play third base. And so he's going to be there, start the season, I'm guessing, in Double-A Tennessee. He got fast tracked there last year and then maybe move him up to Triple-A. But honestly, to me, I don't think there's really a lot of difference between Double and Triple-A when it comes to development anymore. It used to be Triple-A was where a lot of your 4A guys were, better pitching, not as hard of throwers, but guys that just knew how to pitch the ball. But they kind of get to the big leagues and players there would sit on the changeups or the fastballs that didn't quite have enough movement or velocity. I don't know. And then Double-A would be your superstar prospects, guys throwing 100 miles an hour, and all that. But then they maybe didn't have the control. I think the minor leagues are really watered down right now. And I don't think there's not much of a difference to me between Double and Triple-A. I mean, they're both decent leagues. You can go to the bigs from both spots. We've seen that happen. But with that said, the problem is if you're developing guys and you move them up to Triple-A and you take the opportunity for them to earn a promotion away, and I think we've seen that with some guys who might not have really mastered the Double-A level. Then they go to Triple-A and then it's like, well, what are you going to do with them now? And then the next step's either the big leagues or back to Triple-A, and then you end up where a guy's in Triple-A and you could have made that more like Pete Crow Armstrong. I mean, really, last year did really well in Double-A. I mean, there were some slow patches and some big patches, and then they moved into Triple-A, but they also moved him to the big leagues. So totally get that. That's why you want to do that. But you take other guys, and if you move them to Triple-A, then you don't have any movement for them. And then what do? You just sit there and rot, So I think that slow it down a little bit. A guy like Matt Shaw is going to do the same thing in Double-A that he'd do in Triple-A, unless you really think he's going to get to the big leagues this year. And that is not out of spring training, but that is a possibility. Because you're seeing a lot of young players like him get to the big leagues fresh out of college, and he got out of college last year. But he's going to play a ton. I'm guessing he's going to play a ton of third base and try to basically back up whatever Christopher Morel's doing at third. If it's a failure at that spot, then you have Shaw. But I feel like that's why the Cubs did not sign Chapman. And the other thing is, why have your farm system if you're not going to dip in and use the farm system when you need it? And you just signed Bellinger, who can play first and center field, but you also have two guys fighting it for first base. And we're going to talk about Michael Busch, who I think is going to end up with the job leaving camp this year. But then Matt Mervis, center field, Pete Crow Armstrong, and Alexander Canario, saw him in left field, and but he's a center fielder too, and then obviously Mike Tauchman. So you've got to figure out a way, if you're going to make these moves and you're going to sign guys, how they're going to play and how that's going to work out. Again, in the comments section, thanks, guys. for hanging out. Yeah, Jim, I didn't really announce that I was doing this, so you're not really that late to the party. I'm going to tell you guys that are just tuning in right now, it was 24 hours of death. And if you want to know what death feels like, get the rotavirus. But I'm back. Obviously, I got color back in my face, and I'm out here talking to you guys live. So, and you're not going to catch it through the microphone. So that's why I wanted to give you a live show, because I felt bad that we didn't get together this morning. But anyway, Morel's look great at third. You get 2 elite third base options coming. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about here. Hopefully, Morel develops, becomes a star. And yeah, and that's kind of how I feel with it too. I mean, I just think that the move was on the, on the third base deal is that you let Morel do it. If he can't do it, then you bring up Shaw, see what he can do. I don't know that paying $54 million for a 3-year contract of Matt Chapman's a bad contract. I mean, I think that's a lot less than, well, they were all holding out expecting to get, he was thinking like $100 million according to reports, and he gets half of that. But that's about what I thought he was worth. And this is where I'm going to go next with the show. Kike Hernandez just signed back with the Dodgers, right? And he says, I'm not going to say the C word, but I think the C word needs a capital C. Okay. So the C word is collusion. And collusion, guys, is when, and if you didn't know this, it's when the owners get together and say, hey, we're not going to pay this, which has happened before in baseball. And if we all stick together and we don't pay it, then the price will go down. And that is against the law. It's against the law to collude. It's not a good thing. And if I thought that baseball owners were colluding to keep contracts low, then I would say that. And I would take up for the players and say, hey, this isn't fair. What's going on? Da, da, da. But that's not even close to what's going on right now. He's so one-sided with that comment because it is not collusion. This isn't collusion. This is simple economics. And I've talked about this from the beginning. And I know there's a lot of guys who you guys also watch in Chicago media that I like too, I respect too, that were begging the Cubs to pay Bellinger $200 million, that they needed to do that because it was a stare down and all this other stuff. And I kept telling you that it wasn't like I'm a genius here. It's just market. It's simple economics, supply and demand. The problem is with Kike Hernandez and these guys is that they're asking for too much money in a market that doesn't have that money anymore. A lot of the buyers that you had in the past can't buy anymore, Kike, because they lost their television revenue, because Major League Baseball charged them too much for it, and it's not valued that high. People don't care as much about watching your games as they used to. Or maybe it's that they like watching them, but they find different ways to watch them. And I think that both of those are true. We love baseball. Us here, I think baseball is the greatest game that's ever been invented. And I love it. It's in my blood. And I know a lot of you guys feel the same way. But think about what baseball used to be like when you would have a conversation about baseball everywhere. Football's taken that role. I saw a commercial on television yesterday, and it was during a Cubs game. And it was like this guy, and he's got like a stain on his shirt, and he goes in the laundry room, and he's going to throw the shirt on a pile, and a bunch of football players from the Eagles pop out, or whoever, what team. And I'm going, when's the last time a bunch of baseball players popped out of the laundry pile? Baseball players have to do a better job of taking advantage of the marketing aspect of being a star. And that, I feel like the last guy to really do that was maybe Derek Jeter, but think about all the commercials you saw Jeter in, and Ken Griffey Jr. and Cal Ripken and, and those guys. And I just don't feel like baseball has that voice anymore. And so this all gets back to the value that you bring to an organization. Shohei Ohtani didn't have any collusion, but that's also because he brings an international value to the Dodgers. So you're not just competing with dollars in LA, you're getting dollars from the entire globe, including Japan, which loves baseball. Um, the reason why free agents haven't been signed is because a lot of those free agents haven't reset their value based on what the market is. Cody Bellinger, I'm glad they re-signed him. They could have gotten this deal done months ago. And maybe they could have gotten a little bit more out of it. Who knows? But if you would have said to me, hey, the guy's going to get 3 years, $80 million with a couple of opt-outs, so why wait on that? Because because in the past, there's been one of these teams that just pops up like Colorado and the Chris Bryant deal, and they'll go, okay, we'll give him $175 million. Okay, well, I'll take that, instead of, basically playing out the market. And the state of the game right now financially is that the money's just not there to overpay for players. The other part of it too is there's no protection for the teams when they sign deals that are guaranteed money. There's no protection in your job. You go to work, I go to work. I was sick yesterday. If I didn't do a show today, then guess what? I don't get paid, right? If you guys don't go to work, you don't get paid. You get a guaranteed contract. You don't show up, it doesn't matter. You're still getting paid. And that doesn't give the employer a lot of protection. I think that there's a medium in here, but to kind of allude to the fact that you think there was collusion, I think I just feel like he's way off base on that one with the way things are going. I mean, has it happened in the past? Yes. Would I put the owners? I think that's something they wouldn't do. No, I get it. I'm a pretty cynical guy, but that's not the problem that you're dealing with right now. And I thought that was something that I needed to explain here, Evan, and that's why I was kind of talking about that. But all right, let's change gears here. And great to see you, and thank you, Eric, for the super chat there. I think Shaw is our future third baseman. Morel's a stopgap. Guys, I don't know that that's not the truth. I mean, I think that what Shaw's game to me is consistency. What Morel's game is explosiveness. I think that managers want consistency. Like I think I think all of us kind of feel that way. You just want to know what you're getting from time to time. If I hire you to do a job, are you going to be able to do the same job day in and day out? Right? Shaw's going to give you more consistency, but he's not going to have the explosiveness that Morel brings to the table. And that's why the upside on Morel to me is higher than the upside on Shaw. Because if Morel could ever figure out how to corral the mistakes, if he could just get the routine stuff down, then I feel like the rest of it, you'll deal with the strikeouts to have the home runs. And he's got the power to have 40 home runs and knocking 100 guys, if you played him every day. And yeah, that's what Craig says. Look, Craig, I'm with you, man. I mean, it's all, but the problem is that you don't want to put him at DH. You've got to play him in the field. And if he plays in the field, and he's able to play every day, he could easily hit 40 home runs. And I like him. So, but and going back to Shaw's really consistent, makes the plays, really headsy guy. And you want to have a spot for both of those guys on the roster. And then it's up to Craig Counsell to figure out how to get those guys in the game and contributing at the same time. All right, my thoughts. What's up? What's up there? I love that. Matsui. My thoughts on former Marlon Cooper signing with the Cubs. I didn't put that on the list here, but I saw that today, and it was something that I actually kind of thought about a little bit. And it goes, I guess, in a great, kind of a great question to lead me into to this right here. Michael Busch getting a chance to make the roster. Cooper is an insurance policy, right? And I think like Cooper is competing with Michael Busch as much as he's competing with Patrick Wisdom. And what I mean by that is Cooper is a better defender than Wisdom. Now, I don't know how, I haven't seen him play enough to say how much better he is, but it is an upgrade defensively from what I understand. And he can hit for power. He can drive runs in. He's kind of like a little bit better than AAA, and it's hard for him to stick around long time in the big leagues and have success. But if you're the Cubs and you go with Michael Busch, which all indicators are that's exactly what they're going to do, is that they're going to go with Michael Busch at first base. And I mean, you don't trade Ferris Jackson to get Michael Busch and then not play him, right? So you bring in guys like Cooper and you hope, you know what, if Busch just absolutely falls apart and you're not comfortable with him, and then Matt Mervis, you're not comfortable with him, it's a backup plan. And these guys are on minor league deals, so they have to make the team. But I think it's a smart move by the Cubs to bring him in, just because you get to about a week to go before you got to break camp and you got to make a decision. Okay, are we good with what we got here? Or do we need someone that we know is going to give us this? It might not be. The thing with Cooper is, he's here, right? And the Cubs think that Busch can be here, right? But when Busch has been in the big leagues and it's only been for a cup of coffee, he's been below the line, right? So it's a good insurance policy. So yeah, that's what I think. I think it's a good move just based off the fact that it gives you got to put this up here. It gives you some options. And Ronald says I'm a better defender than Wisdom. I've been hard on Wisdom. It's not that I don't appreciate what kind of guy he is, and I think he's a really good guy and good in the clubhouse and all of that. But Craig Counsell said something that I totally agree with, that I think applies to him, that when you look at a player, you got to look at the total player. And sometimes that means that, I'll give you a great example of that. When the Cubs had Sam Fold, the numbers didn't always tell you how good Sam Fold was to help you win, because it's hard to really quantitate how much a defender means when you can plug him in the center field and he takes the gaps away like Fold did. So it's a great defender. And I think that Pete Crow Armstrong has the potential to kind of be that same type of guy. And with Wisdom, I feel like it's like a home run or nothing. It's a home run or a strikeout. And then when you put him in the field, you kind of get nervous every time the ball's hit to him. At least I do. And I think that there's errors there, and they are visible because of his fielding percentage. But I also think there's other balls that he should have got to, that anybody else would have got to, that he doesn't get to, that don't go down as errors. But to me, I'm watching it, I'm going, hey, you got to make that play. And baseball they've gotten to the point where everything's a hit now, like that's kind of what they've told the official scores around the game. And I don't know if you guys knew this, but it used to be, you would just, if a play wasn't made, you tried to really look at it and figure out, okay, is this a hit or an error? Now, and I'm talking about play. There's plays sometimes where you could call it an error, you could give it a hit, and it's really 50-50. Now they're instructed to give them a hit. So if it's 50-50, it's always a hit, which means that it's always 60-40 for the hitter, which I don't mind, because the batting averages are so low right now that, I mean, at least give somebody else, that hit. But Joe, thank you on Wisdom. I'm going now. I want to swing over here to the next topic, because I'm getting off when the Cubs game comes on. So I want to get to this. Owen Caissie turning heads at Cubs camp. And I know you guys have been fired up watching Caissie play. And I told you the guy can play. And I'm going to break it down for you again right here. Caissie is, of all the Cubs prospects, of everyone that I've seen in the Cubs system, and I haven't seen them all. They've got to be upper level prospects for me to have seen them. So if they're in low A or they just got drafted, I haven't seen him, but if I've seen him, so that's guys that would be double A or above. And some of your big prospects. He's the guy to me who I think has the most potential to have a long major league career. Now, what do I mean by that? I think sometimes you see players like Christopher Morel, right? And the upside's really high, but you also see a lot of cracks in the foundation. There's a kind of a low downside, and you know what I mean by that. It's like he'll do something great, and then he'll do something bad, and then it's kind of hard to figure out, is he going to eventually be the guy that does all of this, or is his offensive production going to fall, and then he'll end up somewhere down here, and then you're like, well, I mean, if you're going to bat 230 and hit 25 home runs, and you're going to make a bunch of errors, and we can't put you in the field because whatever. Well, Owen Caissie to me is the opposite of that. Owen Caissie, big, strong kid, left-handed batter. When he makes contact, the ball just flies off of his bat. He's a really mature kid. He's just super, super locked in. Never going to do anything to embarrass you. Always thinking about the team. Defensively, he's played a lot of right field, and I want to talk about that because I feel like for the Cubs to develop him better, they're going to have to move him out of that position, which is something that he hasn't really done a whole lot of. And when he has, it hasn't been the same, because when he's in right field, I feel like he's very reliable. Great routes to the ball, good arm, knows where to throw it, makes the catches. And for a big guy, he moves well. At the plate, he is a threat. Saw him go the other way in the spring training game on Friday for a home run. He can do that. Doesn't do that quite enough, but needs to do that a lot more. He's got great power when he pulls the ball. He's a really clutch hitter. And he's the guy you pencil in the middle of your lineup, and you rely on him. Now, so far this spring training, he's been I'd say the breakout performer, right? And I said that going into spring, that one of these guys would be a breakout performer, like we saw with Chris Bryant when he was coming up, like we saw with Javi Baez, where I think Caissie will hit more home runs this spring. I think Caissie will do more great things this spring. Now, I don't know how many breaking balls that he's seeing right now, and that is going to make a difference on the success and the failure that he has. Because I'd say the one thing, just my scouting report, that he's just got to get better at is laying off when right-handers throw him breaking stuff that's middle in, stuff that comes down and in on him. And I'm sure he's been working on that this offseason, because he is methodical about his work ethic. And I feel like he has the potential to be a superstar for the Cubs. Love him. Cubs got him in the Yu Darvish trade. I know when that trade was made, Jed Hoyer really wanted him, talked to Jed about him in the past, and I see why. I mean, it's obvious when you watch him, and the highest rated outfield draftee out of Canada ever. He spent his offseason working with baseball players from Canada to try to help them get drafted, get a little bit more publicity, exposure, so loves baseball in Canada. But the development that he's going to have to do this this season, is he's going to have to start playing other positions. You signed Seiya Suzuki in right field, and I feel like defensively, when you put Caissie in left, it just doesn't look the same. I've never seen him play first base. I think that the Cubs are going to do both of those things. And if I was them, that's what I would do. I'd split time between left field and first base. I'd still play some right field, but with Seiya Suzuki in right, who knows how long he's going to be there in that position. And he's done a good job too. And you probably want to figure out a way to get both of them in. Now, Rand Lit, he says, Owen stays, Wisdom goes down, maybe. I don't think so. I don't think Caissie has a real chance to make the roster out of spring training. But there will come a time where he'll get his chance in the big leagues, and I think that the results will be a lot different than when we saw Pete Crow Armstrong get up there and struggle. Pete's going to struggle at first and pick it up. I think Owen Caissie's going to get there and be there. But I just don't think that they're gonna really. I don't think that they went in the camp thinking that he really had a chance at making the team. You know, like they keep saying with Michael Busch, they're going, hey, whether it's Jed Hoyer, whether it's Carter Hawkins, whether it's Craig Counsell, they keep saying, hey, you know, he's got a chance to make it, or he's who we're looking at to play first base. They expect him to make the team, and they're giving him that reinforcement. If they really think you're going to make the team, they're going to say that. They're going to say that in the press. With that said, this type of spring performance really gives the Cubs kind of a thought in the back of their head. Could maybe be like when Kyle Schwarber was in the minor leagues. And remember, Schwarber did some stuff like this in spring too. Like he hit home runs like Babe Ruth, which he still does. And he was in Double-A, and the Cubs needed a left-handed bat, and he wasn't ready. And I've said this to you guys before too. The reason why he never developed as a catcher is because the Cubs wanted him to be in the big leagues as a hitter. And it is what it is. He's a DH now. But he got called up. And once you get called up to the big leagues, even if they kind of shovel you back and forth, everything you're doing is to stay in the big leagues. So, I think that there's going to come a time where he'll make it. And I think that could happen sooner than later because of this performance. Who's going to be the first baseman? I think that it's going to be, if Bellinger is going to play first, I've said it before. I think he's going to play as much first base as he does in the outfield. And if I was Craig Counsell, I'd make sure he got into that DH spot a lot too, because you want to save some of that juice for the end of the season. And I felt like he ran out of juice last year. But DH in the big leagues is almost like taking a day off. You don't have to play the field, but you just hit. And it's a mental break, and it's also gives you the opportunity to keep the bat in the lineup, but not have to play the field. So I would say first base Bellinger, splitting time with Michael Busch. That's where I see it right now. And then if Busch, it's hard to predict today, right? Beginning of March, because if Busch really has a bad spring or gets off to a really bad start to the season, and the Cubs feel like he's not really being helpful to them, then you got Matt Mervis or maybe one of these guys like Cooper, who the Cubs signed. There's a couple of these guys that they've brought in from other teams that are on minor league contracts, but have, they've had success in the big leagues. Maybe one of those guys slides into the first base spot. If that's the case, then I think that's a bad thing. What you want is Busch to take this job and run with it, him and Bellinger to play first base, or Mervis to be a guy that does that, which I feel like the Cubs are kind of giving. I just feel like Mervis has a big hill to climb if he's going to, win that job. Really feel bad for this guy, Brennen Davis, finally healthy. I'm telling you, the guy's been so locked in, and it almost feels like it's a, situation where he's been passed by so many great prospects, talking about Owen Caissie, Pete Crow Armstrong, Alexander Canario. Those three guys to me are all better than Brennen Davis. And you already have Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki. So you got your outfield, right? And Mike Tauchman. Where does Brennen Davis fit in? The only thing Brennen Davis can do is just come in and have a killer spring training. And he got off to a great start. He's off to a great start. But then it's like everything in his career has kind of been every time you see him kind of get moving, something bad happens. Bad happens. And, you know, he gets hit by a pitch, suffers a mild concussion, out of the lineup he goes, right? Um, Guy's got great questions in here. Anyway, I hope that Brennan Davis comes back and really has a yeah. I mean, I feel the same way, Phil. I just want this. I want to. He's a good guy. He really is, and I just want to see him kind of come back and build value for himself because he's a guy that the Cubs could trade. I don't see him breaking in on the roster. I honestly probably if it was me, I would have kept Jonathan Perlaza and then took Brendan Davis off of the 40 man if I was the guy that could have done that. But you know what? Who am I? I mean, I just think both guys are really good, but I like the switch hitter with power. And we'll see what Jonathan does in Korea. I mean, he may go out there and flame out, but you know, for Brendan Davis, it just seems like every time he takes a step forward, you know, something bad happens. It's Alex Johnson. Look at that emoji. That dude's stacked right there. Cubs trade Wisdom, Canario, and another prospect to the White Sox for Dylan Cease. I'm about to do a video on this because I saw where someone said that they thought that the Cubs would eventually make the trade to get Dylan Cease back. So weird because the Cubs and the White Sox don't normally do a lot of trades, but then Theo kind of broke that mold, and now they do a lot of trades. I mean, they just traded Bailey Horn back to the White Sox, who they had gotten in a trade from the White Sox, and they got Matt Thompson. And Matt Thompson's, I think, a really decent starter in the minor leagues with a lot of potential. So that was a good deal. And you know, the Sox get a left-hander that is going to pitch in the big leagues and do well. But yeah, I mean, look, if the Cubs are going to make a deal for a right-hander, it would be really awesome to have Dylan Cease. The problem is that the White Sox are in a position. Chris Getz is in charge now. He can't just make a deal and mess that. If he messes this deal up, this is his number one poker chip, right? And when Baltimore was working with Milwaukee to make a trade, they were working with the White Sox, and the White Sox, you know, scoffed at the Orioles, who have a stacked farm system, and so the Brewers took the trade, and the White Sox didn't. The White Sox are going to want they're going to want a premier pitching prospect back and some other guys. So I'm guessing that if I was them and I'm looking at what the Cubs have, it'd be Jordan Wicks, somebody else, and somebody else, or Cade Horton. And if I'm the Cubs, there is no chance I'm trading Horton. I don't care if you would have to give me, I don't know. I mean, I'd have to get 3 or 4 years of a premier starter to give up Cade Horton. I'm that much in the camp. And I've told you guys before, I feel like Horton is the best pitching prospect the Cubs have had since Pryor and Wood days. I mean, think about that. So the hammer slider, the fastball, the fact that the guy pitches inside, he's dominant. So if you can't give him up. So that's kind of where that situation is. So we'll see what happens. The White Sox are content on holding now, and I guess he's going to be one of the most sought after pitchers at the trade deadline. But there's a risk to that. Now, if he comes in and has a bad year, Chris Getz and the White Sox are making a huge mistake by not trading him now while, you know, where his value is high. Now, but if he has a good year, then, you know, the deadline, it's been since they expanded the playoffs, it has been definitely a seller's market. All right, final thing, guys, before we go over and watch the Cubs and the Dodgers play. Shota Imanaga. It's showtime, baby. Debuting today against the Dodgers. I can't wait to watch this guy pitch. This was, to me, one of the big surprises in the offseason. Like Craig Counsell, signing Imanaga, you know, a left-hander who is known for changing speeds and movement on pitches. It's in his personality, really seems to be the type of personality that you want in a locker room. I said it before, as many players you get from Japan as possible, because the way that the baseball culture is out there, it's perfect for what we need over here. The discipline, the enthusiasm, the team mentality. And so having two guys who come from Japan, who grew up in that culture, is only going to make the Cubs better. I can't wait to see what Imanaga looks like today. I know you guys feel like that as well. This is pretty exciting. I mean, it's like, after spending an entire day with my head in a Home Depot bucket, got it out, feeling better now, and we all get to go watch Shota Imanaga and the Cubs pitch today, and we'll talk about that as well. So that's where we are right now. Well, thank all of you guys for hanging out with us. If you haven't yet, make sure that you like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. I told you we're going to do a lot more of these live shows, putting it together right now. But I think that every Friday day game, we're going to do a watch party. So we'll just put the game on and talk about it as things go on and, kind of live that together. Those Friday day games at Wrigley seem like be a perfect time for all of us to hang out. So have a great Saturday, everyone, and go Cubs. Thanks for hanging out and being here on the show.